And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. There are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough that you do it in spite of the fear. You know, just in general, critical thinking is good.
Wanna soar? Get a mentor. What's up, Believe Nation? It's Evan. I believe in you, and this channel is designed to be a part of your daily success routine. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Elon Musk, and 5 of his most life-changing pieces of advice. Mentor me, Elon. Also, if you want to know what Elon Musk and other successful entrepreneurs have to say about building unstoppable confidence, check out my 254 Confidence series, where every day, for the next 254 days, I will send you a morning video for free to help you build your confidence. The link to join is in the description below.
There are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough that you do it in spite of the fear.
Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1, have a high pain threshold.
One does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company. The most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it. And have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company. Because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
So how do you keep your focus on the big picture when you're constantly faced with, we could be out of business in a month?
Well, it's just a very small percentage of mental energy is on the big picture. Like you know where you're generally heading for, and the actual path is going to be some sort of zigzaggy thing in that direction. You try not to deviate too far from the path that you want to be on, but you're going to have to do that to some degree. But I don't want to diminish the. I mean, I think the profit motive is a good one if the rules of an industry are properly set up. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. Because you're not adding enough value.
Rule number 2, don't let failures stop you.
What was your biggest failure, and how did it change you?
Well, I have to really think hard about that. Failure. Never heard of it.
There's your answer.
Well, there's a ton of failures along the way, that's for sure. Like I said, as I said, for SpaceX, the first 3 launches failed. And we're just barely able to scrape together enough parts and money to do the 4th launch. If that 4th launch had failed, we would have been dead. So multiple failures along the way. I tried very hard to get the right expertise in for SpaceX. I tried hard to find a great chief engineer for the rocket, but the good chief engineers wouldn't join, and the bad ones, well, there was no point in hiring them. So I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket. So if I could have found somebody better, then we would have maybe had less than 3 failures.
Rule number 3, work super hard on your vision.
I think certainly being focused on something that you're confident will have high value to someone else, and just being really rigorous in making that assessment, because people tend to, a natural human tendency is wishful thinking. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell. Can you tell the difference between those two things?
Right.
You know? So you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis. I think certainly extremely tenacious, and then just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100-hour weeks every week.
Gosh,
And
that's
then
a lot of work.
all those things improve the odds of success.
Okay.
I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve. When my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night, 7 days a week, all the time. And I sort of briefly had a girlfriend in that period, and in order to be with me, she had to sleep in the office. So work hard, like every waking hour. That's the thing I would say particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, say like, okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company.
Rule number 4, act despite fear.
You are unusually fearless and willing to go in the face of other people telling you something is crazy. And I know a lot of pretty crazy people, you still stand out. Where does that come from, or how do you think about making a decision when everyone tells you this is a crazy idea? Or where do you get the internal strength to do that?
Well, first of all, I'd say I actually think I feel fear quite strongly. So it's not as though I just have the absence of fear. I feel it quite strongly. But there are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of the fear.
So speaking of important things.
Like people shouldn't think, people shouldn't think, well, I feel fear about this and therefore I shouldn't do it. It's normal to feel fear. Like you'd have to do something mentally wrong if you didn't feel fear.
So you just feel it and let the importance of it drive you to do it anyway? Yeah.
Actually, something that can be helpful is fatalism to some degree. If you just accept the probabilities, then that diminishes fear. When starting SpaceX, I thought the odds of success were less than 10%. And I just accepted that actually probably I would just lose everything. But that maybe would make some progress. If we could just move the ball forward, even if we died, maybe some other company could pick up the baton and keep moving it forward, so that would still do some good. Same with Tesla. I thought the odds of a car company succeeding were extremely low.
And rule number 5, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is create a great team.
You need a team around you to deliver a lot of ideas. How do you choose your team? Based on what?
Well, I suppose honestly that it tends to be gut feel more than anything else. So when I interview somebody, my interview question is always the same.
What do you ask?
I said, tell me the story of your life. and the decisions that you made along the way and why you made them. And then, and also tell me about some of the most difficult problems you worked on and how you solved them. And that question, I think, is very important, because the people that really solved the problem, they know exactly how they solved it. They know the little details. And the people that pretended to solve the problem, they can maybe go one level and then they get stuck. Best advice I ever got. Well, I think the physics training is a very good training, where it's a good framework for reasoning, where you're trained to think about first principles and reason from there. And that means boiling things down to the most fundamental truths, and then connecting those truths in a way to try to understand how reality is. Because physics has this problem where they're trying to figure out things that are totally counterintuitive. Yeah. And so they had to have a framework for getting there. Like quantum mechanics is incredibly counterintuitive, but it's true. And so so physics developed a framework for figuring out things that aren't obvious. And that's why I think it's a lot of advice, but it's the right framework. And then just in general, critical thinking is good. Examining whether you have the correct axioms, are the most applicable axioms. Does the logic necessarily connect? And then what are the range of probable outcomes? Outcomes are usually not deterministic. They're a range. And so you want to figure out what those probabilities are, and make sure, ideally, that you're the house. It's fine to take. It's fine to gamble, so long as you're the house.
Yes.
And a subset of that is to listen to critical feedback, which you alluded to earlier. Always solicit critical feedback, particularly from friends, because generally they will be thinking it, but they won't tell you.
Raise your standard.
Apple, at the core, its core value is that we believe that people with passion can change the world for the better.
Not one drop of my self-worth depends on your acceptance of me.
If you want more Elon, check out the video I made on how to be the next Elon Musk. The link is right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
A challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them